Hello and welcome to Workout Wednesday for Power BI Week 20 of 2023. We are doing a remake of a previous Tableau workout. So I'll show you a quick glimpse of what I made in Power BI. It's looking at the length of baseball games from the 1960s up to 2023 and comparing it to the average game length, which is our reference line, in 2023. We'll look at that in more detail later, of course. Here's the original Tableau viz. Same thing, different background, slightly different formatting due to the different tools, but reference line for 2023, going from 1960s to the 2020s. If you happen to use both tools, I encourage you to try both. In Power BI, there's not a lot of interactivity required with this. This is a single visual. I actually did it with a default built-in visual. I did not use Deneb for this, with small multiples and a reference line in use. I added some annotations and noted where we got the data from, and that's about it. So the data comes from this league year-by-year miscellaneous table at baseball-reference.com, and we can pull it directly from there. So we'll get started building. I pulled that URL. Give it a second to connect. And then it's going to offer me a few different things I can choose from the web page. All right. Make sure this table goes down. We won't see all the rows, but that is indeed the table we want. So now I've got it in Power Query Editor. We'll fix a few things here. We're going to do first row as headers, but if I scroll down, you'll notice every so many rows, it repeats the headers again. So we're just going to filter out the rows where it says year. Okay, now that I have the correct rows in place, I only need a couple columns. That is year and time 9i. If you want to keep the rest and supplement, that's great. Otherwise, we can narrow it down. So now I have my two columns. I can fix my data types here. I'm going to make this one a duration. I need to add a couple of custom columns. I'm going to call this one time 9i minutes. So this just takes my original duration and creates a column that gives me the number of minutes. And one note while you're doing this, the published version will say 157 minutes, given that we're still in 2023 and some games were still happening as I was making this. Your 2023 number may be a little different, and that's fine. So now I've got minutes, and because the visual is grouped by decade, I need to create a decade column so I can round down to the year without the last digit, essentially, and then turn it into text and put an S at the end. So 2020s, 2010s, and so on. If you try to do this without this next column, you will notice, at least using the column charts, that it looks a little funky. I needed to add a sort column to get all of my columns to look the same and be in the same, to get all my years to look the same within the decade, so that 1991 was right below 1981, etc. So what I did was do a modulus on the year and basically get the last digit of the year. So if it's 2021, this returns 1. I'm going to actually call this decade index to be consistent with the published version. And then I need one more custom column because I need to label each bar with the year and the duration. So I'm going to call this data label. Make sure my data types are all correct. I could have done that in the formula, but I'll just do it here. All right. Let's close and apply. Oh, I'm going to go back and do 2 things. Fix my table name because that was really long. Game time by year. And I really only want data greater than or equal to 1960. So I'll go ahead and do that in Power Query. And let's try that again. Okay, I've got my table here. Just going to set that to don't summarize. Same with year. Then I need to add a couple of measures. So this one's giving me the 2023 average time because the data is already an average by year. I could have used average here. I just used max. So the time 9i is the duration format. And this time I did essentially the same thing, except I used the minutes column. So I'm going to go ahead and prep my page. Get my background. I'm going to make sure I've got consistent fonts everywhere by just changing my theme. And I don't want any backgrounds on my visual. The border's going to be off. We're not using tooltips. We're using an image, so we kind of don't care about that part. Good enough. So I just copied and pasted my text box there, and then I'll start building our visual. So I want my minutes to be the y-axis. I'm going to use the decade index on the x-axis, and we'll fix that in a second. And then the decade is going to go on the small multiples. Oh, sorry. I'm going to actually use the time I minutes here. All right, so that gets us our small multiples, but we need to format a bit. You'll notice I didn't use year. I'm just going to label the year. This is 1960, 61, etc. You can throw year in the tooltips. Oops. Let's go format some things. I'm going to turn my x-axis to categorical and turn the title off. And then turn the whole thing off. Same thing, turn the title off, turn the whole thing off. And then I would like so it will not let you do 7 rows, so we end up scrolling, and that's just a limitation of Power BI. It kind of depends on your screen and all that a little bit, but if you get here and you're like, why do I have to scroll? That's the visual. You cannot put 7 in here, so it's fine. Customize our padding a little bit. I'm going to use a horizontal border. I'm going to make it kind of a light gray. No background for this. You won't have options for grid lines. If we go look at the data real quick, the average time for 2023 in this version is 156, and the published it's 157, and that's fine. So we need to change our colors. I just put in a dummy value because I'm used to doing that. So if it's greater than or equal to 156, we'll do this orange color. And if it's greater than 0 as a number and less than 156, we'll make it blue. I chose colors that I measured to try to have good color contrast from their background and each other. I'm going to go rename this baseball game length compared to 2023. That's just a little skinnier. Then it's time to add our reference line. So if we select our visual, we'll add a constant line. And we'll say 236 in 2023 as the title. And the value is going to use our 2023 average time in minutes. The color is going to be kind of a light gray, and we'll make our transparency just 20% so we see it. We want a solid line to match the original visual. We're going to turn our data label on, put it on the right, and instead of data value, we're just going to say data name. And we need to change that. We'll make it the same color so it stands out. And then we need to get our data labels on our columns. So we'll go back to data labels. And we can actually use a custom field here if we turn on custom label. So we can use that data label column. Change our color. It will have better contrast once we place it correctly. So we're going to do, it's going to stay horizontal, but it's going to be inside base. And make sure that fits. So there we go. Again, because the data changes depending on what day you accessed it, the colors of each bar may be different. If I open my original, 1983 is blue and not orange because I had 237 instead of 236 for the current 2023 number, and that is fine. The goal is that you were able to use the small multiples with the reference line and a lot of conditional formatting, and to get your data into the right data types to make all of this work. I hope you enjoyed this week's Workout Wednesday. Thanks for watching.